So I'm originally from Akron. My grandparents lived in the Cleveland area, and I got my doctorate from the University of Toledo in 2014. And as an only child, I wanted to be closer to my parents. And at the same time, I was looking to become a college president, and I was looking for particular types of jobs at the college level. And a dean position had come open here at in the Cleveland area, and I applied, got the job. So when my wife and I were looking to move, we knew we didn't want to move back to Akron because we had gotten used to living in larger cities. We had met in Baltimore. But when we moved here, we were thinking, well, let's live in Cleveland. But the question is, where do you want to live? We had a young child, so school districts were important. My experience as an African-American man meant that I wanted to live in the suburbs, but not a suburb that didn't have a good representation of African-American people. Because, having grown up in Akron, we learned very early on, don't go out in Stowe at nighttime, don't be in Cuyahoga Falls at nighttime. So I didn't want to, even in my adult life, now realizing that not much has changed, live in a suburb where I look strange coming into the neighborhood. So we picked Euclid. We liked that Euclid had a good representation of African-American people, which, for us meant that I could not be suspicious when I come home down one of the, neighborhood streets. And while at the same time, it was diverse enough where, our child that we would be raising would be exposed to different kinds of people. So we thought Euclid was a good place. So I took the dean job. My wife and I moved here with our son. And up until the death of Luke Stewart, I had come into what I thought was an imperfect suburb, but one that did not have as pervasive a problem as I later found out as I started to look a little closer. Well, once I got my PhD, included not only training law enforcement people, because I'm a psychologist, so I look at how people use critical thinking in their work. So I'd studied pharmacists, my dissertation used teachers, I'd studied undergraduate students, and I also studied law enforcement people. I moved into the community well aware of the national context of policing, the history with African American people. For me, my experiences with Euclid was I knew from friends who I'm a graduate of Kent State University. And, a lot of my friends, when they talk about those suburbs, like I mentioned earlier with Akron, those suburbs that you don't go out to or shouldn't be seen in. Well, that was 20 years ago. So I thought, well, 20 years later, Euclid could probably be a nice spot to be in. It's still, there's no place on the planet where, at least in the United States, where an African-American person cannot consider issues with police. But I thought, at least Euclid had been quiet in terms of national stories. And then, you just have to deal with the garden variety occasional racist police officer, as you would in any suburb. But Euclid has always had a reputation. Don't mess around out in Euclid. So, I got a PhD. I'm a college dean. I'm educated, middle class. It's sometimes easy to forget that you're still Black and you will still be treated no matter what your credentials are, what your level of education, what your family status is, like the police have treated Black people. I actually saw, all of the cars and everything and didn't know what had happened. Luke Stewart was murdered around the corner from my house. That was a wake-up call for me. And then, around the same time, a few months later, you then have Michael Lamiat, who beats up Richard Hubbard. There's news clips of me, down at City Hall, talking about, this is unacceptable behavior. But this is also because of my doctorate is in education. So for me, when I see officer behavior, I have to look at how closely that behavior is acceptable or unacceptable in the organization and it exists. And what I said on the evening where we all went to City Hall and protesting Richard Hubbard is that this man did not simply just have a bad day and go out, grab a man out of his car and beat him up. He did so because there's an organizational culture that led him to believe that there would be no need to hold him accountable for it because it would be in stride with the values of the organization.
Did not expect to get emotional at all. For our family, it is just like deja vu. It's like watching my cousin being killed all over again. And to know that anybody can take somebody's life without justification, without any give a damn, like, and get up the next morning and continue on, something has to happen. We cannot continue to protest, walk, and be peaceful. My family has been peaceful. We have protested quietly. And 3 years later, we have no answers. We have no change. The same thing is continuing to happen. We got to do something. We have to do something. When Luke was murdered in March, we pleaded, begged, asked for them to take the officer off the streets. That did not happen until August, when we went to their city hall, city council meeting, and got a little rowdy. We didn't tear up nothing, but we let our voices be heard. And that's what we have to do. We have to take a stand. Our time is definitely right now. You saw something with George Floyd that we really haven't seen before. We saw people enraged all over the world because enough is enough. We were supposed to sit down with the mayor of Euclid and come up with a citizens review board. Our opportunity to look at the same facts that they look at and offer some insight on what we thought happened, what should have happened, and what can be changed. How can we de-escalate these interactions with the police where everything is not turning out so tragic?
And I believe that it's going to take us everyday Americans to fix this problem. We have to stop listening to what so many pundits want to tell us. We have to stop listening to what perhaps the leaders in the media want to tell us. We have to stop listening to what the politicians want to tell us. They said the revolution will not be televised, but I don't know if that's actually true, because I believe, with the social media revolution, the revolution will be played out on smartphones and on our personal screens. And I believe it's up to, us, the American people, to use our eyes and our better judgment to draw the inferences which are readily before us. And we have to advocate for what we know is right and what we know is true to our core values, as opposed to, what the talking heads would regurgitate and force down our throats and try and convince us to believe is truth.
BLM Cleveland, has been around. One of the two incidents that compelled us to come into being was, of course, the deaths of Tamir Rice, as well as the deaths of Timothy Russell and Melissa Williams. And, so we were already in existence. We had an incident involving, we had incidents rather, that happened in Euclid. And, we were compelled to come out and support the family of Luke Stewart and, to be able to amplify their voices, to help them get some justice, to help the local government to actually, take this seriously. But we wanted to, it was all about empowering the family, because, any of us are just, one incident with police away from becoming the next hashtag. And so, we all have a sense of urgency. I know I certainly do, that every time I assist, a family, it's in my best interest to do so. So we try to show up in that capacity. And, we helped the family. We showed up to city council meetings to try to be a voice for and with the family. We showed up for that. We did canvassing, trying to find folks who might have seen something in regards to what happened to Luke Stewart. We even went to city council and actually tried to speak with the mayor as well as the chief to appeal to their sense of decency. And, none of it to any avail. The family of Luke Stewart, never really got a real apology. They never really got any, it was like, an acknowledgement of perhaps condolences, hey, but there was never an I'm sorry or anything like that. And, for us, that's what we're there for, not only to assist the family, but to validate their humanity, because they're treated inhumanely. They're treated in a way that, it appears that, animals get more sympathy than the loss of a Black human life. Something happens to an animal, it'll, you're talking about a law getting changed and it's expedited, but here it is. Luke Stewart got murdered, and we see everything that happened wrong with how that was handled. And no one was compelled to take any steps to make sure that nothing like that happened again. And so, when you're experiencing all that and you're seeing all of that, you start to lose your feeling of humanity. And BLM is here to say, hey, to the families, we see you, we love you, we're with you, we're bleeding too, we're crying too. And, and we're here for the long haul. And, we've continued an ongoing relationship with the Stewart family. I love Miss Mary. She's, a strong, awesome woman. I love Luke's sister, Tierra. I mean, I just, Cleander, I love that whole family. They're just a strong, resilient family. I don't know how they're able to maintain the way that they are, but they're doing it. And, I just hope that one day they'll get some real justice. And unfortunately, at least it's a harder thing to expect with a mayor and city council like they have in the city of Euclid. And it's a harder thing to expect from the current presidential administration if you got the DOJ in here to try to see if there was a constitutional violation, on the part of Luke Stewart's murder. So, but we're here for the family. We're here with the family, for the long haul.
yourself. All right. Here we are, Kareem. We're live.
All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. Appreciate you showing up and supporting. We wanted to break into this. I just wanted to first say that when you look at this story regarding the city of Euclid, I really want you to understand what you're looking at. What you're looking at is, what folks have really been hearing about as of lately, how they've really been making folks aware of the origins of policing when they talk about slave codes, when they talk about, post-slavery or emancipation, when they started to create laws that actually helped to keep the recently freed slaves, to get them incarcerated, bring them back into slavery again. And, Euclid is a prime example of that, in how, they had laws that recently came under scrutiny where, some young people were arrested because they spit on the sidewalk. We saw, incidents in the city of Euclid where young people who gather year after year at the end of their school year at the local skating rink, because residents who I'm sure were not residents that identify with the people there. You know, the people there were young Black youth, but these residents felt threatened because, you know, and that goes back to the old slave or post-emancipation ordinances where you couldn't have so many Blacks gather in any place at any one time. And, you know, those laws were in full effect. The enforcement of those laws and that mindset is in full effect in the city of Euclid. And as a result, you have people being abused by law enforcement. You have people being murdered by law enforcement. And in the same vein of how things were in the past, it continues because, you know, there's no accountability. It's okay. It's an accepted practice because you have to keep those people in line. And so, you know, just want folks to really take a look at it with a clear lens, understand exactly what they're looking at when it comes to the city of Euclid and how police are going, you know, unaccountable for the things that they're doing. And they have the processes in place to keep them unaccountable. With that being said, we want you to take a look. It started off with the murder of Luke Stewart, which is what led us into this work with regards to the city of Euclid and with regards to this project. But it just, as my friend Brian said, it was the rabbit hole, you know what I mean? As we traveled down the rabbit hole, you know, we just saw so more of the systemic issues that exist and that culture that exists in the city of Euclid. And it just turned into a project that's not only of Luke, but it's also a story of the city of Euclid. And with that being said, let's proceed into the docuseries, this episode.
Last Monday, March 13th, the Euclid Police Department was involved in an officer-involved shooting. This is an ongoing investigation being conducted by an outside, independent agency. This thorough investigation will take time. All inquiries should be directed to the agency conducting this investigation, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Identification. While this independent investigation is ongoing, the men and women of the Euclid Police Department will continue to serve and protect the residents and visitors of the city of Euclid, just as we have always done and will continue to do. Thank you.
All right, if we could maybe just discuss the incident. Sure. Describe how you got the call, what led you to that call, what you heard, what you observed, all that good stuff. And at the end, if we have some follow-up questions, we'll ask you.
Okay. I was dispatched to a suspicious vehicle call. The information that the dispatcher gave to me was a resident had called, said she observed a vehicle that had been idling for like 20 minutes in front of her house. I think the wording she used was didn't belong there. I told Officer Rhodes over the air, we're going to end up pulling this guy out of the car.
He told me via radio that once you get here, we're going to end up pulling him out. And that when he said that I knew that he needed another vehicle, another officer there so that he could pull this male out because some sort of crime was being committed or some investigation needed to be done further into it. It wasn't one of these, okay, see you later, have a good day. Something further was going to happen.
My name is Kareem Hinton. I'm one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter Cleveland. I'm about to listen to some of the recordings from the BCI investigation regarding the murder of Luke Stewart.
As Officer Rhodes is approaching, I knocked on the window. Just gave him 3 knocks. As soon as I knocked on the window, he woke up. I wanted to grab him by the head, and that was my goal. If I get the head out, I can get him out. I got him. It wasn't a headlock. It wasn't on his throat. I was under his mandible, that jaw. I think they call it the mandibular angle pressure point or whatever it is, but it's very unpleasant to have that happen. As me and him were struggling, the cars started moving.
Shot in the chest and the neck, unresponsive, doing CPR. While driving? Yeah, he was driving.
I found out about this on the news. I was watching the news. About 9 o'clock news kept coming across the screen. Police involved shooting in Euclid. I seen my brother's car. I tried calling him, no answer. So I tried calling around to all the local hospitals. They didn't have him in none of the local hospitals. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I have to go up to the police department to find out what's going on. I asked the lady that was sitting behind the desk, I say, I'm here about the incident that's going on outside. The lady says to me, what incident? I say, the incident that your officers are literally walking to from here. So at this point, I go home. I'm like, Mom, something's not right. I can't get a hold of Luke. I'm called around to every hospital. They say they don't have him. They don't even have a John Doe, because I was asking that question as well. So at this point, me, my mom, and my 2 cousins, we go back up to Euclid Police Department. My mom just go in and just was like, y'all killed my son.
Luke was sleeping. The officers acknowledged that their actions would have startled him when they woke him up and caused him confusion. They didn't announce themselves as police officers. All that Catalani did was knock on the window and wave, and then Luke woke up, and Catalani immediately opened the door and started to try to pull Luke out of the car. At the same time, Officer Rhodes got in the passenger side seat of the car, put himself inside the car with his knees on the passenger seat, and started to push. They were doing a push-pull thing to try to remove him from the car. Again, Luke had not committed any crime. Rhodes' inability to deal with this kind of a situation that police officers confront all the time, removing person from the car, encountering a person asleep in the car, that's not a unique situation in policing. But his complete inability to deal with this situation in a legal way, it exposes the problems within Euclid's training, because Euclid did not have any training in how to remove a person from the car. Euclid certainly didn't train on how to, to jump into the car. None of that was covered by the Euclid Police Department's training. And instead, what was covered just months before Rhodes killed Luke Stewart was a defensive tactics training where they made light of the use of force against people and, just joked about beating people up.
Who puts humor in excessive force training? That's something you take serious. You out here dealing with people. This is something close to military training. I've been to the military. They didn't have no humor in nothing they trained us to do. So to say that was humor, I feel like that was just basically telling your officers to go out there and be reckless.
That is the mentality that Rhodes had when he approached Luke Stewart on the morning that he killed him.
And are you saying anything to him?
When I initially jumped in the vehicle, I remember telling him to stop. And then after that, after we got past car 20, I was yelling at him, but I have no idea what was coming out of my mouth. I tried striking him with my fist. It didn't do anything. So then I deployed the taser. Again, initially it had some effect, and then the safety got turned on. I took out my duty weapon. I shot him twice in the chest. After the first 2 rounds went into his chest, he looked at me, said, "Nah, nigga," swung at me again. I avoided the swing, and I came up at a higher angle, what I thought was a downward angle, and I fired again, and I saw that round go into his neck. When that round went into his neck, I could see he kind of loosened up. It definitely had an effect. He tried to say something, but no words came out. He did a half swing, but there was not much there. And then he just slowly started losing body function, and he was no longer doing anything. He was just slowly relaxing and slipping over.
I'm done. I can't. I mean, this guy, it's like he's telling of a fucking lullaby or something.
The type of gunshot wounds that Luke sustained, they took him to Euclid Hospital. Euclid Hospital couldn't help him. Anybody knows that. We got 2 trauma centers here, Metro or University. The type of gunshot wounds he had, he wasn't supposed to go there. So it makes me also think they broke protocol. I think my brother was dead on the scene and they moved his body. That's what I honestly feel.
The person who was shot, I mean, was he coherent? Did he say anything?
The person who was shot?
Yeah.
He was lifeless when we arrived on scene.
So I mean, is it fair to say, I know you're not a doctor and I'm not a doctor, is it fair to say that he was dead?
Yes. He was not breathing and he had electrical activity in his heart, but no pulse.
Okay. Is that common?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you consciously go through your use of force continuum whenever you were, or was this training and tradition?
It was just do it. I wasn't thinking to myself of the use of force continuum. It was just my, obviously us telling him stop didn't work. I used my hands, they didn't work. I used the taser, it didn't work. It just
it was a natural progression.
Exactly.
Could you tell, did he have a seatbelt on?
He did not have a seatbelt on.
Do you believe your actions were consistent with your training?
I do.
There was no reason for any of this interaction, particularly not any kind of use of force on him in that moment when he had just woken up. They never announced themselves as police officers. There were no red and blue lights on the cars. They had their takedown lights on, so there were blinding lights shining in Luke's face and men attacking him from both sides of the car as soon as he woke up.
Did you put any lights on the vehicle, or?
I activated my takedown lights, the white lights from my light bar.
Okay.
And then I had my headlights on as well. But I didn't activate my my emergency lights, the red or blue lights.
Okay.
From my understanding, the dash cams, the red and blue lights activates the dash cams. So why didn't you guys even have your red and blue lights on so he can even acknowledge who you were? What was the plan? What was the motive? That's a part of the accountability, right? That's a big part of it right there for me. Because even if we would have had footage to see what happened, we don't know nothing but what you're telling us.
Did the other officer have any lights on?
Same thing. He had his headlights on and his takedown light from his light bar. And I believe he had a spotlight. I think he had a spotlight on the car too.
Okay. You said you turned down your takedown lights and the spotlight. If we could just describe maybe what a takedown light is, and what your spotlight is.
Spotlight handle that operates a beam of light that sits on the pillar of the car, designed to just shoot in, illuminate what you're looking at. Takedown lights, we have them centered on the light bar. LED lights, same theory, just shoot white light forward, aids in illuminating what you're walking up to and masking your approach on a traffic stop.
These officers were not wearing the usual police uniform, so they didn't have the shiny badge. They had the fatigue type clothing. They had the skull cap that may have possessed some type of badge or lettering that identified them as law enforcement. But at nighttime, thread and needlework are not shiny like an actual badge. To top it off, waking somebody up into a potentially dangerous situation, they might not notice all that stuff.
Both of the officers failed to turn on their dash cams. Catalani claims he forgot. Rhodes actually considered turning it on and decided not to. Rhodes's car was directly in front of Luke's car, so had he followed the policy of the police department and turned on his dash cam, we would have video of this. But he didn't. He decided not to turn it on. And that is actually something that was noted by the police department, that there was a failure to comply with that policy, but there was no discipline even for that.
It's been hard. It's been hard. Luke's birthday is Sunday. The day Luke was killed was my daughter's birthday. It took a toll on my mom. My mom's health has been, going down, but she's still trying for the most part. His kids miss him. They talk about him. Just say things like, oh, I wish the police didn't kill my dad, Then, hey, that was my little brother. Me and my oldest brother, we both miss him to death. Like, if we could reverse the hands of time, we definitely would. But right now, at this point, we just want some type of justice at the end of the day. We don't want this to happen to another family. Because at the rate it's going to happen.
This question for Chief Meyer. As far as the cameras, the dash cams, the body cams that Euclid Police uses, My understanding is that the dash cams only comes on when the overhead lights are on. Is that correct?
That is when they'll automatically come on, or should automatically come on.
Now with the body cams, is it up to the officer to turn it on? What is the rule for them to turn the body cams on?
We don't issue body cams, so we have a group of officers. If they want to purchase their own, they're permitted to purchase their own.
Okay.
And we do have kind of a since it's not a mandatory wear, we don't provide them. There is a lot of discretion as to when they turn those on and when they're not turned on. Again, they're voluntary and they're paid for by the individual officers.
So we don't have any officers with body cams? Or we do have
Oh, we
some?
do.
Right.
We do have
Right.
officers with body cams, yes.
Right. So you said, but it's up to them when they want to turn it on or turn it off?
It's even up to them if they're wearing them or not wearing them, because we do not provide them.
Okay, okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council, and those joining us in the audience. It's good to have so many people with us tonight. As we do every year, we have annual awards for our police department.
I am Scott Meyer, the Chief of Police of the Euclid Police Department. I am very proud of this officer and all of our officers who every day risk their lives for the citizens of this city.
Yeah, can I put some clothes on? Come on. This man is arresting me for my music because I don't give him my name. He can't do this. You're hurting me. You're hurting me.
Every day they show up to work, ready to work.
I asked him to let me put my clothes on. He handcuffed me.
Okay, let's get that way.
I need my phone.
Clear up one in custody. You want me to go check the apartment?
I want to check my own apartment.
You can't check the apartment right now. Do you want
Why
me to
not? Why am I being violated? Why am I in handcuffs? Tell me what's going on.
Watch what?
We have an uptick in violent crime, in guns, in violence, in drugs. And these officers will continue to address those issues. Not only will they address those issues, they will continue to positively engage the public day in and day out.
Shut the car off.
Oh, man, you hurt my car.
This is their city. This is their police department. They work for the residents of this city, and they take that to a level that most people wouldn't understand.
You hurt my arm. Let me see your hand.
You hurt my arm.
Let me see your heart.
You hurt my arm. You hurt. I got what's the name?
Taser deployment. Taser deployment.
Come on.
Get on. Get on. Lay on the ground now.
On the ground now.
Don't move.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Now.
Rayer and 210.
I couldn't be more proud of this group of officers, and I couldn't be more proud to be the chief of the Euclid Police Department. Thank you.
My name is Tara Stewart. I am the sister of Luke Stewart, who was murdered by Euclid police. We had went to one of their city council meetings, trying to demand, at this point, because the officers were still working after this, we had to go to a city council meeting to demand they be taken off the street until the investigation is complete. At this city council meeting, the officer that killed my brother was receiving a recommendation.
How did that feel?
Like a knife to the heart, like, this man just roughly killed somebody and you guys gonna say and give him a recommendation. So it was like, well, did you guys want him to kill him?
Next is Sergeant Beasy and Officer Catalani.
You giving awards to murdering cops? You giving awards to
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. You're out of order. I'd ask you to please, sir. Sir. Officers, can you please remove the resident?
All right. Can you introduce yourself?
Certainly. My name is Christopher McNeil, and I am an attorney licensed in the state of Ohio in the Northern District of Ohio. Michael Amiot is a defendant in a case I'm currently presenting against himself on behalf of Mr. Richard Hubbard and Lamar.
Can you cut it off before we're talking? Just hand me the keys. Hand me the car keys. That's it? So we're out there, stop it. You have to stop behind the white stop bar.
Officer Amiot had observed Mr. Hubbard commit what he described as a stop bar violation. There is typically a white line on the pavement right before the stop sign that you are supposed to stop completely at and come to a full stop. It's important to note that all of the Euclid police officers at that time had been advised by their superior officers not to stop anybody for committing a stop bar infraction. Based upon this traffic violation, Officer Amiot decided that he wanted to perform a stop on Mr. Hubbard. And upon him stepping out of that vehicle, that's where the controversy really ensues. There's some video that's been widely circulated, which in my view indicates that Mr. Hubbard did everything he could to comply with the officer's instructions. Officer Amiot would have you believe that Mr. Hubbard resisted that arrest at that time. And it was then that he began to use physical force against Mr. Hubbard, striking him with his knees, slamming him to the ground. Mr. Hubbard was tased by Officer Amiot's partner, Officer Pavkov. The video also indicates that Officer Amiot mounted Mr. Hubbard and began pummeling him. Ultimately, Mr. Hubbard sustained some pretty egregious injuries as a result of that encounter. In my legal opinion, it was a textbook example of an excessive use of force. Hence why we brought this action against the city of Euclid and its police department.
I would like to read a brief statement regarding Euclid Police Officer Amiot, badge 63. Officer Amiot has been suspended without pay for the maximum amount of time that I may suspend per our rules. I am also recommending to the mayor that she review the matter and impose additional suspension without pay. During the time of suspension, Officer Amiot will not be permitted to perform any functions as a Euclid police officer. Moving forward, the Euclid Police Department reaffirms its commitment to serving all of its citizens with fairness and compassion. This, along with protecting the public, is our highest priority. Our efforts to address these issues begin immediately.
So he is still on the force?
He is still on the force, despite the fact that the city did move to fire him after this incident occurred. However, after going through the binding arbitration, he was given his job back. These collective bargaining agreements that these cities and municipalities enter into with these police unions, it manifests itself as such that you have a body of unelected officials arbitrators, right? These guys haven't been elected by the citizens. They haven't been appointed by any of the government officials, and yet they have the power to overturn discipline, including terminations. And because of that, we have these situations where officers who have been determined to be problematic, who have been determined to be toxic, they get their jobs back, and they're allowed to keep that badge. They're allowed to keep their gun there, continue their unconstitutional behavior. And it's one of the biggest obstacles, along with qualified immunity, that we see in actually having police accountability in this country.
My name is Dr. Richard Montgomery, and I'm a resident of the city of Euclid. The death of Luke Stewart became sort of got to an inflection point when Richard Hubbard got beat. Because in March, when Luke got killed, yes, there was outrage. Yes, there was disbelief and shock. But now here it's a few months later, and now you got this viral video going around, which led people to believe that it's time to go to City Hall and talk about how upset we are. But the problem has been, and it is in the movements across this nation, is we go out and we protest. We fill up City Hall. We talk about how not satisfied we are. And then we let the politicians off the hook to go back to doing the same things that led to this situation in the first place.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have business on the agenda this evening. If you continue to clap, you'll be removed from the room. Thank you. Excuse me. We are in a meeting. You will be removed from the room. There is an opportunity to address City Council. It's called Committee of the Whole, and it is the 15th item on our agenda.
I'm glad that I have the opportunity to address you, Chief Mayor. I want to make it clear that I have no axe to grind against law enforcement in general. Before I was an attorney, I was a soldier. I served with 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment based out of Fort Hood with many men and women far braver than I am. I remember our status of force agreement and our unit's SOP was that we were not to fire unless we were fired upon. I find it incredibly ironic and heartbreaking that our brave men and women in uniform serving overseas in combat zones afford greater deference, dignity, and respect for human life than many of our police departments provide for our own citizens of the United States of America.
Radio 288.
Where's that in your bag?
Don't touch my bag, bro. Don't touch shit.
Bro.
Sit down.
Excuse me. In my bag, bro. You're not touching my bag. You're not touching my bag. No, my mother will get on my bag.
We're gonna take it out.
Bro, you cannot touch my fucking. Bro, what the fuck is you doing?
Here, just you wanna lay her down? Yeah.
I swear to God.
On the floor. Lay down.
The fact that the chief of police has never once found any civilian complaint against any officer to have any merit is ludicrous.
When they decided to re-look at Lamar Wright's case, part of it was because when you look at the complaints that the chief reviews, he's never found any of his officers guilty of anything.
The Euclid Police Department has been shown to have a complete disregard for the people who they police, to have a disregard for, frankly, constitutional and legal policing, and that they treat the use of force as a laughing matter. The appellate court just issued a scathing decision recognizing all of these things from the police department.
Well, I hope that the appeals court reversing Lamar Wright's case will turn into a reversal for Luke Stewart. There's just too many things that went wrong in the events that led to Luke's death for his family not to receive justice.
I think what's so significant about the Lamar Wright ruling is that the court recognized how problematic the department as a whole is. The Monell theory is a difficult claim to make. To prove that a constitutional violation, a use of force, is the result of a custom or practice is a big leap in the legal world. And so for the Sixth Circuit and a fairly conservative panel on the Sixth Circuit to recognize that this department is so infused with inappropriate training, lack of discipline, lack of supervision, just across the board problems. I don't believe that there's any way for us to then look at the Luke Stewart case in a vacuum, right? This is the department that caused that violation as well.
Luke Stewart was shot 5 times, 3 times to the chest, once to the neck, and once to the right wrist. That should be traumatic for anyone, even a police officer. I'm not surprised by some of the things that the chief of police got up and said today, but I'm disappointed. As a business owner in Euclid, I'm afraid. The community should be afraid. Somebody, city council, should be required to make sure that Officer Rhodes is okay, because he's back on the force, patrolling with a gun after taking somebody's life. You guys are all elected officials. Somebody voted to put you in this position. Someone took the time out to support you guys. The family of Luke Stewart is asking for your support. We're asking for your answers to the questions. Chief, do you have an answer?
The loss of any life is tragic, it's devastating, and it's sad. This is my first opportunity to say to you and to the family that I do send, you don't know what's in my heart, so you can snicker and we can have that type of thing. I send my condolences for the sad events that took place. I don't know what else to say.
Would you consider reviewing the policy of reinstating someone back to work even 14 days after taking someone's life? I don't know what the grieving process looks like, Chief, but I do know that when you shoot someone that many times, I'm a CCW carrier. If I ever had to take someone's life to protect myself, I would be traumatized. I definitely can understand returning Officer Rhodes back to work, but maybe desk duty. Maybe this policy needs to be reevaluated.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your comments. I believe the chief has answered the question at this time to the best of his ability in light of the pending investigation. So thank you.
Welcome to the State of Injustice panel discussion. My name is LaTonya Goldsby, President and co-founder of Black Lives Matter Cleveland, and I will be your moderator for this evening's discussion. Let's start with introductions. Tell us who you are and the role that you played in this process We'll start with you, Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian BZ Douglas, and I guess in some degree I reinitiated the ball rolling on this. I decided to jump into journalism in July of last year, and BLM is someone that's been close to me since my very first story. And so I was following Kareem actually, attending rallies he was speaking at, and a friend of mine had mentioned that they were looking to shoot a piece about Luke Stewart. And so I asked him about that. I'm like, hey, is that true? You still looking for somebody? And he told me, yeah. So my role in this has been to be the lead investigator. And then I finally learned what a producer is on a film. I do all of the things that don't have like an official title. So when Kareem told me that they were interested in doing this, I roped in our director and editor, Roger Glenn Hill, who for his own sanity is taking a nice relaxing cabin vacation. So he could not join us here today, but I want to give all the kudos out to him for the incredible work. This really wouldn't have happened. He's the experienced documentarian. He was, I served as his assistant on him, so I can't give him enough of a shout out. Everybody can check out RogerGlennHill.com, and I built that website.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug.
Thanks,
For Roger.
Roger.
That's me. I'm busy.
Hey, you gotta keep the lights on, right, buddy?
Absolutely.
Yes. So Kareem, you wanna?
So so once again, I'm Kareem Hinton, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Cleveland. I found myself endeavoring into this because of where we find ourselves here in this particular area with regards to activism and amplifying the voices of the victims. And, there's oftentimes a lack of turnout and support, on the streets when you're trying to bring attention to an issue. And so we, believe that we needed to adapt. And, looking at what's going on around the country, we see that, by having video of these murders, it made a huge difference. By having some type of social media cover some of these murders, it really amplifies the voices of the families, it amplifies the incident, and it really helps to garner some support for seeking justice. And so, we took that concept and we believe that, this was very necessary to do if we were going to, in fact, help to shed a light on the city of Euclid, shed a light on Luke Stewart's case and the cases of the others like Richard Hubbard, and Lamar and, others in the city of Euclid, to really show what the heck's going on in that city. And so this is just basically a product of us adapting to how things are and how we're going to actually fight the injustices that we have going on here locally and statewide.
Thank you. I want to take this time to introduce the Stewart family. We have Jocelyn and Tara. Ms. Smith, could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Oh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Jocelyn Smith. I am the cousin of Luke Stewart. I must say this is a little more overwhelming than I anticipated. I'm pretty good with speaking. I've been doing it for years, but to watch this was a lot. Is this my time to talk? You want the rest of my family to introduce themselves?
Yeah, if you want to share some more about yourself, that's fine.
I used to be a business owner in Euclid, as you saw in the clip. I closed my business in Euclid because my patrons were being harassed. There were always Euclid police officers sitting in the parking lot where my store was. It was just a bad experience all the way around. So I had that store for about 3 months. The store logo you see behind me is a store that I had for the last 6 years. And it's not in the city of Euclid. So I've kept this store, but a lot has changed in 4 years. I know people may not understand this when I say this, but for those families that have videos, and it's very painful to watch, it's even more painful when you don't have the video, to know the things that happen. So even as disturbing as it was to see those things, I would have liked to know exactly what happened with my cousin. So I'm just here at this point. Tomorrow it will be 4 years that Luke was murdered. And as we prepare to celebrate his life, his niece is turning 15, and that black cloud is just still there. Like, we have no understanding, no way to move forward. Nothing has changed. We're stuck in a moment of time, and it's just a huge challenge for my family at this point.
Again, Ms. Smith, I extend my condolences to your family. I'm so sorry for your loss. Tara, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Tara Stewart. I'm Luke's sister. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Just keep it simple.
Yeah, I thought you're gonna elaborate or share some more with us.
Oh, I didn't know what exactly you wanted me to after that. I mean, basically, like my cousin just said, like, right now I'm kind of speechless. Like I said, tomorrow is my daughter's birthday. It'll be 4 years Luke been gone. Like I said, it's still hurtful. Like, with the little bit of video that we do have, I can just imagine what the whole video would have been like. It's just crazy. Like, everything from the beginning of ending of what they did was just inexcusable. Period.
Well, and again, sorry for your loss. There's nothing we could say that would, ever replace the hurt that you all have been through or the pain that you all go through. But, we stand in solidarity with your family.
I appreciate it.
And just want to say we love y'all. We really do.
Appreciate it. Love y'all too.
So, Brian, of the various findings.
Oh, do we want to do Jacqueline?
I'm sorry. Yes, Jacqueline. This is Jacqueline, the family attorney. Jacqueline, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, LaTonya. I'm Jacqueline Green. I'm a partner at the law firm of Friedman, Gilbert, and Gerhard Stein. And I'm a member of the team that represents the family of Luke Stewart. And his family has just been incredibly strong as advocates for him. And it's been a privilege to work with and for them, and also to work with the community organizers who are part of the conversation tonight and have been doing the work. So thanks for having me.
So Brian, of the various findings, what are some of the things that stuck out to you during the investigation process of Luke Stewart's case?
Sorry, I had, there was a little bit of feedback there. Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So at the top of the question.
Okay, no problem. Of the various findings, what were some of the things that stuck out to you during the investigation of Luke Stewart's case?
Well, the thing that just jumped out immediately as you looked at the case was there was no way to tell Luke's story in a vacuum. It certainly wasn't some isolated story of, Matthew Rhodes, this lone rogue problematic cop. Like Kareem said, it was really a rabbit hole. And then, so this whole thing started out very small. The plan was we were going to, tell the story of Luke Stewart through interviews with his attorney, Tara, and Kareem was going to talk about it, as well as Dr. Richard Montgomery. And we were just going to try and shine a small light on it. But then after all of the interviews happened and we really learned about, to use the title of the episode, the landscape of brutality that surrounded Luke, we didn't see a way to tell the story in isolation. And it was really amazing. I have to give a big shout out to the Euclid Public Library for maintaining such incredible city council meeting archives. I binge watched so many of those. Like, I found a new favorite Netflix show. and looking for dates, and then seeing Black Lives Matter, seeing Kareem finding that moment where he's standing up in the council and seeing how that they were treating people coming, the whole process of discovery for this was rattling and compelling. And no matter how much time we put into it, I still feel like we couldn't have done it. It's hard to ever feel like you've fully done it justice. So I hope the Stewart family feels that it was a worthwhile thing, and that we, are bringing out a lot of important information and bringing the heat that needs to be there in order for these public officials to actually do anything.
Yeah. Jocelyn, since the murder of Luke Stewart, what interactions between the family and the city have occurred outside of the legal process, or has there been any interaction?
I forgot to unmute myself there. There's been absolutely no interactions, in spite of the fact that they agreed to meet with us and come up with civilian review board of police involved incidents. They've never reached out. I know the pandemic is happening, but just like we're communicating right now in the middle of a pandemic still, they could have reached out to us. We have reached out and asked a couple of questions with no answers, asking for some different police reports and stuff via the attorneys, and we've received nothing. So very silent on their end when it comes to any other things that they promised. When I communicated directly with the mayor and the chief that day that they had SWAT, which you guys showed in the video, they haven't talked to us since.
So Tara, what is it that you miss the most about your brother, and how is the family coping during this time?
I miss everything about my brother, from him wanting to eat up all the food, just being irritated. Like, I don't know, Luke, the kids loved Luke. Like, he was just their idol for some reason, but during this time it's hard. It's real hard. But for the most part right now, I'll be trying to be strong for my daughter. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want her birthday every year for the rest of her life to just be such a sad day. But at the same time, too, it's hard to forget him. He can't be forgotten. No matter how I try to, weed the two, I can't.
And my next question is for everybody on the panel. What would you like to see out of this that the city of Euclid should implement? Tara, I guess we'll start with you.
Well, first, since they say that that their body cameras are optional, make that a rule that they be used.
Yeah.
They just need to revamp their whole excessive force policy. People need to be held accountable, starting with Rhodes and Catalani. And just to break the racial bias out there, period.
Jocelyn, would you like to expand on that?
I definitely agree with Tierra. I was blown back when the chief said it's optional to have a body cam, especially when I went through their budget and I saw that they got donated thousands of dollars for body cameras. So my first question would be, what did they do with the money? Because if the cops are buying their body cameras and you guys are getting grants and money to buy body cameras, why are the officers not wearing them? So definitely, I think there should be a requirement that whenever you encounter someone that you may, because as Officer Rhodes said in his testimony, he automatically knew based on Catalani saying that they were going to have to pull Luke out the car. He already knew it was going to be escalated. When you know something like that is happening, that you cut that body camera on. So worst case scenario, if you played it by the books, the family gets a chance to see that. Mm-hmm. Secondly, I feel like one of the things they didn't do in Luke's encounter is the takedown light. The blue and red lights are huge. Those should be cut on anytime you're pursuing. It identifies who you are if nothing else does. When you see the blue and red behind you. You automatically know it's the police. You don't assume it's your friend trying to pull you over or nothing like that. You know these are the police. Lastly, looking at the video of myself, nothing has changed. I think that if an officer takes someone's life, even in self-defense, they should not be going right back out on the force to police the community in any capacity. That needs to be looked at. Their policy needs an overhaul altogether. It has not been reviewed in years, and times have changed. Hell, we out of slavery, right? So let's make the policies look like that. Because right now, what I'm seeing is if the police pull me over, I have a CCW, I get treated different, not in a good way. It's always, do you have your firearm in the car? Well, yeah, that's the purpose of having it, is so I can have it on me. And the aggression goes on from there. Definitely the use of force policy needs to be addressed in the way that they encounter the public, period. The video of the young lady on the ground, the 16-year-old whose book bag they went in for an ID, that could have simply waited until her parents arrived. It's just the way that they escalate situations. They need to learn some real de-escalation training.
Thank you. Kareem?
So definitely some of what I would like to see, for starters, I believe that law enforcement should be made to give a statement on the events that have taken place before they get off that shift. Having officers get the opportunity to find out what video is out there, what's on that video, what can be proved. By giving them that opportunity, it gives them, space where they can alter the story and justify murdering someone based on what they know that the public knows. So basically, they can, formulate a good lie. But, the other thing that I would like to see is with regards to when an officer murders someone, that these officers immediately be taken off the street. You don't know if that officer has something wrong mentally and emotionally. And so they show no concern for citizens, for the residents of Euclid, by actually removing them until an investigation is complete. And then lastly, as far as changes go, I would love to see a change in their training. These officers have been allowed to receive training that pretty much gives them incentive or desire to kill. It's basically, the training tells them that, hey, it's better if you make it home to your family than the next person. And, that training has manifested itself in the way that they treat people. We look at what happened to Richard Hubbard, who was stopped for, a mere traffic violation. And yet he was being told to give his keys out of the car. Like, that's not common. That's not regular. You're actually escalating or creating a situation. We look at what happened to Luke. You had officers that in two different cars, they did not park their cars in such a way as to stop a person from being able to pull off. They manufactured a situation in which they could kill somebody. And they did so as soon as they got the opportunity. Why? Has a lot to do with, one, the fact that they don't value that Black life that they are in front of, or that is in front of them. And two, it has everything to do with that training. So they definitely need to do far better with regards to training, getting rid of some, and also in doing better at others, like de-escalation.
Brian, what compelled you to dig further into Luke's case? And has this process changed your views on the state of justice in Ohio, and how so?
I think what I really came away with this case is to whatever degree I may have ever been susceptible to any arguments about, like, when someone has a fatal or dangerous encounter with the police, and people say, well, what were they doing? Or talks about the ways that they didn't. It's now it's just gone. I don't have any way to ever take that seriously. Looking at just how deeply the failure of, like Kareem was saying, the training was, and as the person who created the animations in episode 1 that recreate the scene based off of the officers' depositions, I had to think really deeply, constantly about this scenario. And it was so striking to me. Kareem even brought this up, that at no point did Rhodes even consider he could sit down and have a conversation with this person. And that it is the training that completely set these officers in motion with their warrior mindset. That it, like I said, it never even entered his mind that Luke was unarmed, and he woke him from a dead sleep. Buckle your seatbelt. Say, okay, all right, I know things got out of hand. Let's talk about this. If you're afraid of getting thrown out of the windshield. And the fact that, like Jocelyn said, and really glad that she picked up on this, and a lot of people picked up on the fact that when you're listening to the deposition, and I heard Catalani, who was the first one on the scene, tell Rhodes, get over here, we're going to pull this guy out of the car. He preordained it. Rhodes showed up for action. And I really am glad that that's landing on people, that how Catalani set things into motion that way. And that's one of the things I see is this is very analogous to Tamir Rice, in that you have Timothy Lohman, who is a much less experienced officer with a much more seasoned officer, basically thrust into this position. In Tamir's case, literally, Gormack drove the car within feet of Tamir Rice, and Lohman had to jump out with all of his inexperience and all of his training telling him to attack and be ready for battle. I feel like it's the same thing with Rhodes, and that's why with this series, it really seemed like Euclid could have a lot of lessons to tell for all of Ohio, and a lot of lessons could be learned by just surveying these problematic cities. Not that there's no city without problems, but finding these patterns and establishing, like, this is where the systemic abuses lie.
Yeah. What stuck out to me was the fact that he specifically named the mandible technique as his way of getting Luke Stewart out the car. Like, he immediately wanted to grab him by the head. I'm not a doctor or surgeon, but if you're talking about the mandible, that's not too far from someone's neck, to be considered a chokehold.
I actually looked up, there's training videos you can find where police train on how to do this thing where, like, you grab them by the jaw and pull them in a certain way. It sounds like Catalani didn't even know how to do it properly.
Failure in training all the way around.
Well, what's one of the craziest side notes in the research of this whole thing? So I went through all of their training stuff, and that's going to be a big part of episodes 3 and 4. We'll get more into the training, some of the stuff we found. But one thing that really surprised me is that there is like 200 pages of taser training. Like, if the training book is this thick, the taser part is like half of it. And
is that where they train you to hit somebody with the butt of it? Because that's what he did.
There's everything in there, from like what you should be aware of when you tase someone from an elevated position, if they're near a pool, if they're everything. One thing that definitely I'm sure someone I wish would have pointed out in training is, if you're worried about someone driving a car dangerously, tasing them while their foot is on the gas, probably not a good idea. Yeah. So the training's like I said, the big thing.
Yeah. Kareem, as an activist and a member of Black Lives Matter Cleveland, how has this case affected you?
You know what? This particular case has affected me a couple different ways. I mean, the fact that the officers still have their jobs and remain free, is very problematic to me, and it makes me incredibly sad and at a loss, because I feel I take it personally as a failure to the family to the Stewart family and to Luke, because I just, I wanted to be there for them. I wanted for us to really affect some real change, in this. So, it's really saddened me. But the other way it's really affected me is just, it's put in me or cemented in me just a huge sense of urgency. This is the stuff that we've got to change. If we don't, you're talking about, the city of Euclid, which the majority of the residents there are Black. If we can't get that law enforcement agency under control, we know who their victims are going to be, And so, I'm trying to save my people. And so I just have a huge sense of urgency. And so it's just lit something up under me that's not going out. I promise you that, to the Stewart family, to the other residents there, to Richard, who I've gotten to know and really care about personally, loving and just loving who he is as a man and, as a father, all of that. Like, they deserve better. So, I'm here for y'all just as much as I am for me, because I passed through Euclid too.
Yeah. Oh, and I don't know if you can see from here, Chris jumped on the stream too.
Yes, I did. I did. There's so many incidents, so many. I know that, the Luke Stewart family is, getting ready to honor Luke for his 4-year anniversary. Tara, what are some of the ways you look to keep Luke's legacy alive?
Oh.
By doing exactly what we're doing. This is a rest of my life journey. I'll never give up.
Jacqueline, as the family's attorney, can you give us an update on the status of Luke's case? Are there any efforts outside of civil litigations regarding the officer that murdered Luke Stewart?
So in terms of the court case right now, where we're at is we're actually attempting to get into the Supreme Court. And that's because we had this terrible decision come out of the Sixth Circuit. What the court in the Sixth Circuit ultimately said, first let me back up, right? The trial court, unfortunately, I'm going to dismiss this case because the rights here that Luke's rights were not clearly established at the time that this happened. We ended up in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals to say, the judge got it wrong. You have to turn this around. His rights were obviously clearly established. You look at all these other cases of police-involved shootings and murders of Black and brown people. And when you look at these cases, you know that what happened here was wrong. And what happened in the Sixth Circuit was that the court ultimately said, well, actually, we agree a reasonable jury could find that the facts of this case show excessive force. But at the time that this happened in our circuit, which includes Ohio, Michigan, Tennessee, and Kentucky in the Sixth Circuit, we don't have cases that are close enough to this one. So cops off the hook, because he couldn't have known, since we don't have cases just like this one, that what he did was wrong. The problem with that, of course, is that we presented a lot of cases from this circuit and other circuits, other parts of the country, that show that what happened here was wrong. And there was just this incredibly moving dissent from Judge Donald, who is a judge on the panel. And if anyone has an opportunity to read her words, I just think it gave me chills, saying that, yeah, what happened here is part of a long history and legacy of brutalizing Black and brown people. And it's clear that what happened here was wrong. It was clearly established, but the majority of the panel disagreed. So where we are at is that we're trying to get the Supreme Court to hear the case. Our petition is now pending, waiting for a response from the city of Euclid and from Rhodes. And we're going to have to wait and see whether or not the Supreme Court takes up the case. And this is particularly, I think, important in light of Lamar Wright's case, who we also heard about in the second part of the video tonight, because the Sixth Circuit said something different about his case. And they looked at the training. They looked at the chief's absolute failure to discipline anyone ever. They looked at the fact that, at every turn, this department essentially just looks the other way or even encourages excessive force events, and particularly against Black and brown people. And in that case, we know that if the court had decided that, yes, Luke's rights were clearly established, we know that we could also have had liability from the city of Euclid, because that's how things came out in Lamar Wright's case. But in Luke's case, the court said, it wasn't clearly established. So we are hoping the Supreme Court takes that question up. That's what we're waiting on. And in the meantime, I think we all look toward the crisis of leadership in the Euclid Police Department. I grew up in Euclid. It's not a secret. It's not a new thing that racist policing and brutality is a problem in the city of Euclid. And that department is led by a chief who just doesn't care and, in fact, is complicit in the violence. And, I hope that the community is able to get a response from the city after all the hard work that everyone's been putting in and continues to put in.
Christopher McNeil, the attorney for Richard Hubbard, also a victim of the Euclid Police Department. Chris, do you have a message or a point of view you wish to get out to our viewers?
Oh, absolutely, LaTonya. First, let me thank Brian for inviting me to this panel. I want to thank you and Kareem, obviously, for everything that you do. It's part of Black Lives Matter Cleveland. But my message is simply here that, listen, I don't think that the city of Euclid has still properly addressed their problems. And I say this because when I look at the fact that you still have an officer like Michael Amiot, who he was terminated, he got reinstated, due to arbitration and whatnot, these collective bargaining agreements, which is a whole other issue we can address. So he gets his job back. And they have the audacity to put this guy inside of their courtroom doing courtroom security. And you got to ask yourself, this guy is notorious for these allegations of police brutality. And this is the guy that you want your citizens, coming into the court and being greeted by. What kind of a message is that sending? You add to that, the fact that, I saw something on Facebook today about how I guess the Euclid police think it's a good idea for them to start slowly cruising through communities in their suburb with their lights on to stop people, just to let them know that your friendly neighborhood police are here to let you know what's going on in the neighborhood. There's a certain tone deafness there at a minimum, or rather, there's a certain naivete that I think that they trying to bail themselves up, which just isn't fair. I think what's really going on is quite more nefarious, which is that there's a concerted effort by the powers that be to keep the community of Euclid in the status quo. And it's much in the same way that, my distinguished colleague, Jackie Green, I would be remiss if I didn't say hello to Miss Jackie Green, whose law firm, I had the opportunity to, clerk in and learn so much of what, I've learned from the law, from practicing with the great attorneys like Jackie Green, like Sarah Gelsomino, and of course, like Terry Gilbert and Gordon Friedman. I'd be remiss if I didn't, give them their flowers since they are here on this broadcast as well. But nevertheless, that being said, yes, I think that the city of Euclid and their police force, their problem at the heart of it is that they behave and act as though they are occupying soldiers rather than civilian servants. I believe that their ultimate, philosophy appears as though is to intimidate and it's to brutalize rather than in protecting the serve. And when I look at the way that, they've handled, Richard's case thus far. Now, I will say Richard's case is on, a bit of a different trajectory because Richard isn't, your run-of-the-mill plaintiff in a civil lawsuit, because it's not just about getting money. It's not just about dollar signs. We want total justice. We want Officer Amiot. We want him off the streets. Okay, we want him convicted of the offenses for which he is currently facing prosecution. Unfortunately, due to this pandemic and the fact that they've had to bring a special prosecutor out there in Euclid to prosecute him for the crimes that he's charged with criminally, that's kind of delayed justice. But justice will eventually, have to be rendered. And I have no doubt that, we will have total justice. We're going back to mediation soon on the case. Even though it's still currently stayed, due to certain, Fifth Amendment issues regarding, the officers, Amiot being charged criminally. But nevertheless,
You know, we're going to keep fighting until we get total justice, because it's not just about dollars and cents, you know, for our pain and suffering. It's about getting relief, full relief and full satisfaction from the boot of the oppressor upon our collective necks.
Justice, what are some of the changes you all hope to see happen? This question is for anyone on the panel.
I'm sorry, I think we had some echo there. What was?
The question again. What are some of the changes since the release of State of Injustice? What are some of the changes you all hope to see happen?
Let me answer that first. I want to see some cops prosecuted. I want to see some changes in the city of Euclid now that they're under a spotlight. And I definitely want to see the residents of Euclid, particularly the ones who have been silent with regards to what's been happening to Black residents and Black citizens that come through Euclid. You know, I want to see those folks who have been giving the unconditional support to police and just being blind to what's happening to Black and brown people at the hands of law enforcement. I want them to express their dismay and their intolerance of such behavior. And, you know, I think that would be huge. And I think that's a big point in, you know, putting things like this out, you know, just exposing it, shining the light on it. And now, you know, the onus is on them. It's like, now you know, now you see it. Now, what are you going to do about it?
For the family, you know, since the release of this docuseries, what are some of the changes you hope to see come out of this?
Just going back a little bit to the video, when I heard the EMT basically say that that Luke was dead then. Like, I'm looking for accountability. Stop lying. Like, hold them accountable for what they doing. Y'all out here doing all this reckless ass stuff. Well, excuse my language, doing all this reckless stuff, and then acting like it's okay, and it's not. Like, y'all done so many things wrong, and it's in the naked eye to see, and people are not even acknowledging it. Like, my biggest issue is accountability, period. From the mayor, the chief, the police, all of them out there, because they know what's going on. They're allowing it.
Jacqueline, would you like to add anything to that, or Jocelyn?
Sure. I agree with everything that everyone was saying about what should be different and what should be changed. And I think leadership has got to change. And this department has such a practice of engaging in aggressive, racist policing across the board. The only way to get rid of that is with cleaning house and with aggressive retraining to teach people about fundamental lessons of humanity, because nobody in that department really understands it at this point in time. So, you know, again, it's in the hands of the community, right? Through courts and lawsuits, there are only certain things we can achieve. And the community has been working so hard, and I know we'll carry this fight forward.
Thank you. Jocelyn, would you like to add anything?
Unmute, Jocelyn.
Alrighty, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah,
Yes.
we got you.
Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
I would like to see changes to people in political offices within Euclid. I would like to see a new mayor. I would like to see a new chief of police. I would like for the community to get out and be more involved. And I think that the officers in Euclid should live in Euclid. It is my understanding that they all don't. And I think that the people that are policing the community should look like the community and be like the community. And if they want to police that community, live in that community and get to know the people in the community so that they're not treating them so aggressively when they're encountering them. Anybody can have a bad day, and I get that. but at the same time, everybody should be treated equally. So what I would like to see change is all the people in office there, because obviously and clearly they have allowed a lot of this stuff to happen, because it didn't stop with Luke. You have other cases after Luke, before Luke, in between Luke. And in order for that to stop, the people that have the power to impose penalties upon the people who break the law, not just the citizens, but also the officers, they have to do their job. So that's where I would start. That's what I want to see changed.
Attorney McNeil, would you like to add anything to that? Yeah, we can't. I can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
I'm not hearing you, Chris.
You're muted. You're muted.
So I'll try and learn how to read lips here on the fly. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, I think
We can't hear you, Chris.
We can't hear you.
All right. Chris, Chris, you can just come on over here in the other room and I'll let you sit in my chair if you're having technical difficulties.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So, Brian, what's next for the state of injustice?
Well, we have 2 more episodes to complete, and those I think are going to be the trickiest in terms of, leaving the viewer with the best idea of this is the current state and these are the best things to do. What we are going to be focusing on, like I said, in episode 3, we're going to step back even further and talk about the culture. And that's where we get into incidents at like the Playmore. Also incidences where there have been, some kids get rowdy at a high school basketball game, as I'm heard has happened every now and then. And they started pepper spraying kids in the gym. Yeah. So we have that to look forward to. And then we're really going to be hitting the training hard. And I think that is going to be a through line for this. If we're looking at all of Ohio, is the bad training that they are getting and the good training that they are not taking, that may not even be available to them. But even when it is, they refuse to do it. So, if you go to stateofinjustice.com right now, the Indiegogo campaign is essentially to fund just paying for the completion of season 1. And then the really big part of it is to also develop a really robust website that will be a supplement for everything. Like we can have extended interviews. I want to show all of our source material. I think that's especially important because as a documentary, it's produced by Black Lives Matter. I'm very unabashedly a movement journalist. People are going to say bias, or how is your objectivity? And so that's where I think the website will be really great to just be like, here's everything. You can listen to all of the audio depositions. You can read all of the court transcripts this is based on. And so, that's really what the campaign is going to be funding, is letting us finish episode 1, building a website to allow this to also be a living project and set us up to keep doing this, because honestly, I really love this work. I love working with you guys, and I'd like to move on to East Cleveland next, because that's certainly something. Oh, and you know what? There's one little thing I want to throw in. You were saying like, what's something we want to see change? And one thing, it's not a little thing, but it's a little thing, is I want to see these police departments be required to notify families. It's shocking to me how common I've discovered that is, that someone is killed and the family has to find about it on the news or do this crazy runaround. It wasn't a unique aspect of the Luke Stewart story that the family went through.
I just wanted to touch on to what Brian was saying. If you listen to what he said in regards to and what has been said with regards to how this all came about, what is being done, understand that this is a grassroots campaign. This is a grassroots effort. So, as we've stated on our page and with folks that talk to us, Black Lives Matter Cleveland does not get money from Black Lives Matter Global Network. Okay. They are not distributing money to the local chapters around the country. They're keeping this money for themselves. So this right here is totally a local effort. And this is funded by, basically donations that come in from supporters, And this is funded by out of our pockets. So we work 9 to 5s. We want to see this stuff done, and we're doing our part, you know what I mean, to make sure this stuff gets done. So if we don't collect $5,000, guess what? They're over there sacrificing, giving their all of their time almost freely. You know what I mean? And we're over here figuring out a way to make something shake because we know it's got to get done. And so, you know, I just really wanted to stress that to people. You know what I mean? Not just here locally in Cleveland, but around the country. You know, fund your local chapters. Fund your local chapters. Your local activists. That's where it's at. Thank you.
And thank you for uplifting that, because a lot of the work that's being done across the country globally is done through grassroots organizing. So that's very important that we support the folks boots on the ground. Thank you.
Boots on the ground.
Thanks for joining us, Mr. McNeil. The last question that we asked were, what were some of the changes since the release of this documentary that you would like to see happen in Euclid?
Basically, I just want more people to stay angry and pissed off. Because if we have more angry and pissed off citizens, we'll have a much better functioning government, including the interactions we have with our police department. We need judges to be angry and pissed off when they see the constitutional rights of the citizens in their jurisdiction being trampled upon. And we need them to start taking a hard look at some of these common law doctrines, such as qualified immunity and whatnot. If it's judge made, it can be judge unmade. We just need some judges. We need to elect some judges who are going to go into, you know, their these appellate courts and whatnot, and who are going to strike these laws down in order to have a more perfect government that reflects power to the people. We also need attorneys to be, you know, angry and pissed off, because too often, you know, sometimes we can see things sometimes, you know, but maybe we're afraid, you know, to maybe take on a cause in our own right because we figure we're going to be out there by ourselves. You know, and we're concerned about our professional reputations, and we're concerned about our connections here. We're concerned about our career ambitions, and we're concerned about all of the wrong things instead of making sure that we're moving the law forward in a way that comports with our Constitution and the principles that this nation is supposed to be about. We need citizens to be angry and pissed off so that they can vote out, you know, these politicians, these mayors, who are going to put these, you know, tone deaf and incompetent and corrupt and unethical and racist police chiefs in place. Listen, I had a judge. I'm not going to tell you which judge, but I had a judge tell me in confidence, refer to the chief of police in their jurisdiction as a racist. And for me, if you've got a whole judge who's got a chief of police that you believe is a racist, that to me is indicative of a much larger and more sinister problem. And finally, you know, we need more of our community organizers and activists to do much like what we're trying to do, what Kareem and what LaTonya are trying to do here in terms of coming together and bringing the community together and getting them on board to air out some of these grievances, because there's strength in numbers. There's no reason that in these suburbs, listen, I've been here in this area now for what, 7 years now, 7-8 years, something like that, you know. And let me tell you, there's a lot of potential energy here. There's a lot of Black communities here. There's a Black middle class here. Okay. And what we need to do is we need to sometimes loosen up, you know, our collar, unbuckle our ties and whatnot, and get into some good trouble, you know, so that we can raise awareness and bring attention. And remember when November rolls around to organize and vote out these individuals, because if we can put the politicians in place and hold them accountable, then they will build an administration that's going to be reflective of how the people want, of the government that the people deserve. Okay, so at the end of the day, and I'll say this in closing, you know, I'm a firm believer that, you know, people will get a government closer to what they deserve as long as they stay pissed off and involved. And that's all I have right now for that, at least.
Thank you. Kareem, you mentioned supporting local chapters can you tell our audience how they can get involved with the work your chapter is doing?
Sure. They can go to our Facebook page, where we've posted links with regards to how they can donate to us. We are a 501c3, so therefore it is tax deductible. They can donate to, like I said, once again, go to our Facebook page. You can actually go to where it state of injustice is. You can log on to that and you can contribute to the Indiegogo campaign, or hey, you can give us a call or perhaps come into our office. If you desire to get involved, reach out to us. And, we're here for you. And, we need and appreciate any help we can get. We'll make sure that on our Facebook page, on our Twitter, we'll be posting some of the links. And I'm sorry, because just to show you how we're not just like always digging, trying to get folks to give us money. I don't even remember completely like what our PayPal account is, you know what I mean, that you'd be able to donate. So I'm going to ask LaTonya, do you remember? Because your memory is far better than mine, so that you can share it with them, because I can't.
I do. You can also find that information on our website, which is www.blm.org. BLMCleveland.org.
See, that's why she's the president.
Yes,
because she knows what time it is.
And it's also in our bio on our Facebook page and Twitter, so it's readily available. Folks who are interested in donating. So I want to take this time to thank the Stewart family for joining us. I know you all are. It's hard, I can't find the words to say that can actually adequately reflect, your experience. But I just want you all to know that we're still holding Luke deep in our hearts. We're holding you all up as tomorrow approaches, and we continue to stand in solidarity with you all. And we love you. And if you we're here, and we're going to be here. And that's for any family that is going through any experiences like this. Reach out to us. We only move when the family calls on us. That has been a focal point of ours since our establishment, that if the family reaches out, we're coming. So I want to thank Luke Stewart, the Stewart family, for, being on the battlefield in spite of. I don't know. Are we doing any questions? Do we have any questions?
Yeah, we'll answer
that
a few
are coming
questions.
in.
Yeah.
If folks have any questions.
We're only a half hour over time. It's good.
That's not bad. All right. Any questions? No questions? All right. Well, thank you for joining the State of Injustice discussion panel. Again, check out BLM Cleveland, stateofinjustice.com for any upcoming events and information.